If she dies, she dies. I'm not ruining my marriage for someone who won't be around much longer anyway. Those were my son's exact words to the doctor when they called to tell him I was dying. I was lying unconscious in a hospital bed, machines keeping me alive, and my only child chose dinner reservations over saying goodbye to his mother. 1 week after I got better, I handed him an envelope. When he opened it, he screamed so loud the neighbors called the police. His wife packed her bags that same night and never came back. By Christmas, he thought he'd lost everything: his marriage, his money, even his friends. And I'm the one who orchestrated it all. You're probably thinking I'm a monster, that no mother should do what I did to her own child. But let me tell you something. By the time you hear this whole story, you'll understand why that envelope was the greatest act of love I ever gave him. Because sometimes saving someone means destroying the life they think they want. Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button now, because what I'm about to tell you will change how you think about family, loyalty, and what real love actually looks like when everything is on the line. This is the story of how I saved my son by becoming the villain in his life, and why, 5 years later, he thanks me for it every single day. If you've ever been told you're too old to start over, let me tell you, that's a lie. Your story isn't over, and you still have chapters left to write. Our best-selling book, Reclaiming Your Peace After Pain, is filled with simple, powerful steps to help you heal, rebuild, and fall in love with life again. Click the link in the description box and start your new beginning today. My name is Julia Bradford, and for 68 years, I thought I knew what family meant. I raised my son Camden alone after his father died in a car accident when Cam was just 7 years old. We were all each other had, and I poured everything into making sure he had every opportunity one never got. I worked 2 jobs to pay for his college. I sold my mother's jewelry to help him buy his first house in Maplewood, New Jersey. When he married Sloan 3 years before this story began, I spent my entire retirement savings, $85,000, on their dream wedding at the Riverside Country Club. Sloan Hartwell came from old money, the kind of family that had trust funds and summer houses in the Hamptons. She was beautiful, educated, and seemed to love my son. At least, that's what I thought. What I didn't know then was that her family's love came with conditions she was about to violate in the worst possible way. Camden worked as a financial advisor at Morgan Stanley, pulling in about $150,000 a year. Good money, but not Sloan's level. She didn't work, said she was finding herself and exploring her passion for interior design. What she was really doing was spending Camden's money like water. I should have seen the signs earlier. It started small. Sloan would roll her eyes when Camden mentioned visiting me. She'd make little comments about my house being quaint, which was her polite way of saying old and cheap. When I'd bring over homemade meals, she'd thank me with this fake smile, and I'd later find the food in their garbage can. "Mom, Sloan is just particular about what she eats," Camden would say when I mentioned it. "She's got a sensitive stomach." But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew what I was seeing. The bigger red flag came during Christmas 2023. I'd saved up to buy them a nice gift, a $2,000 espresso machine that Sloan had been talking about for months. When she opened it, she barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, thanks, Julia. Though I should mention, we already ordered the Italian one I really wanted. This one is nice, though." Camden looked embarrassed. "Sloan, that was really thoughtful of Mom." "Of course it was," she said, already scrolling through her Instagram. "I'll find somewhere to put it." That machine ended up in their garage sale 6 months later. I saw it when I drove by their house on my way to the grocery store. $50. A $2,000 machine for $50. If you're watching this and thinking about your own family dynamics, you know how this feels. Comment below if you've ever felt pushed out by someone your child married. By spring 2024, Camden was calling less. Our weekly dinners became monthly, then almost never. When I'd call him at work, his assistant would say he was in meetings. When I'd text, he'd respond hours later with short answers. Everything okay with you too? I asked during one of our rare phone calls in June. We're great, Mom. Just busy. Sloane's been working on redecorating the house, and I've got some big clients right now. I'd love to see what she's done with the place. Silence. Then, yeah, maybe soon. Listen, I've got to run. Talk later. He hung up before I could answer. I drove by their house that weekend. There were construction trucks in the driveway. Through the windows, I could see everything had changed. The furniture I'd helped them pick out when they first moved in was gone. Everything was white and modern and cold-looking. A neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was walking her dog and stopped to chat. Quite the renovation they're doing, she said. Sloane told me they're spending close to $200,000 on it. Must be nice to have that kind of money. My stomach dropped. $200,000? Camden made good money, but that was more than his entire yearly salary. Where were they getting that kind of cash? On August 15th, 2024, at 2:47 a.m., everything changed. I woke up on my bathroom floor. The tiles were cold against my cheek, and I couldn't move my left arm. The pain in my chest felt like someone was standing on my ribs. I managed to reach my phone and dial 911. Ma'am, can you speak? What's your emergency? Heart attack, I whispered. I think I'm having a heart attack. The paramedics arrived in 12 minutes. I remember being lifted onto the stretcher, the oxygen mask, the sirens. In the ambulance, one of them was talking fast into his radio. 68-year-old female, possible MI, blood pressure dropping, ETA 4 minutes. At Morristown Medical Center, they rushed me into the emergency room. Dr. Richardson, the cardiologist, was waiting. I remember him leaning over me, speaking clearly. Mrs. Bradford, you've had a major heart attack. We need to get you into surgery right now. My son, I managed to say. Camden Bradford. Call my son. We will. Don't worry about anything except getting better. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia was a nurse saying, We're going to take good care of you. I found out what happened next from Dr. Richardson 3 days later, when I was finally stable enough for visitors. We called your son multiple times, he said, sitting in the chair next to my hospital bed. The first call was at 3:15 a.m. We told him you'd had a massive heart attack and that he should come immediately, that it could be touch and go. What did he say? Dr. Richardson looked uncomfortable. He said he was taking his wife to dinner at some new restaurant in Manhattan, that it was their anniversary dinner, and they'd had reservations for months. The words hit me harder than the heart attack. But surely, he came after dinner? I asked. We called again at 11 p.m. Told him your condition was critical, that if family wanted to say goodbye, they should come tonight. I held my breath. He said, and I quote, I would rather lose my mother than lose my wife. If she dies, she dies. I'm not ruining my marriage for someone who won't be around much longer anyway. The room went quiet except for the beeping of my heart monitor. I could see the numbers on the screen jumping higher. Mrs. Bradford, your heart rate is elevating. Try to stay calm. But calm was the last thing I felt. 25 years of sacrifice. 2 jobs so he could go to college. My retirement fund for his wedding. My mother's engagement ring that I sold to help with his house down payment. And when I was dying, he chose dinner reservations. Did anyone else call? I asked quietly. Your neighbor, Mrs. Chen. She's been here every day. Brought you flowers and has been handling things at your house. Sweet Mrs. Chen, who I barely knew beyond waving hello. She cared more about my life than my own son. If this is hitting close to home for you, make sure you're subscribed to Her Real Stories. We share real experiences about family, betrayal, and finding your strength when people let you down. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Camden never came. Not once. He didn't call either. The only contact I had was a text message on day 4. Heard you're doing better. Glad you're okay. That was it. 14 words after I almost died. During those long days staring at the hospital ceiling, something hardened inside me. Not my heart, the doctors said that was healing well. Something deeper. The part of me that had been making excuses for Camden, that had been trying to see Sloane's good side, that had been believing their lies about being busy. Mrs. Chen visited every day. She brought me real news about what was happening in their lives while I was fighting for mine. The construction at their house is almost done, she told me on day 10. Sloane posted pictures on her social media. It looks like a magazine now. All white and fancy. That's nice, I said, not really meaning it. She also posted about their anniversary dinner. Went to some place called Le Bernardin. One of those places where dinner costs more than most people make in a week. I looked up at her. The night I had my heart attack. Yes. She posted all these pictures of their fancy meal, talking about what a perfect night it was. Posted them around midnight. So while I was in surgery, fighting for my life, they were taking selfies with their expensive wine and celebrating their perfect marriage. That's when I started planning my counterattack. When I got home from the hospital on August 30th, I had a choice. I could pretend everything was normal, keep trying to be the loving mother, and hope Camden would eventually remember that I existed. Or I could find out exactly what kind of man I'd raised and what kind of woman had stolen him from me. I chose option 2. First, I called my old friend Patricia, who worked in banking. We'd been friends since high school, and she owed me a favor from when I helped her through her divorce. Patty, I need to ask you something, and it might sound strange. Is there a way to find out about someone's financial situation? Like loans or credit applications? Julia, what's going on? I told her everything. The heart attack, Camden's response, the expensive renovation, Sloane's spending habits. By the end, Patricia was quiet. That son of a... Julia, I'm so sorry. And yes, there might be a way. I can't access private bank records, but if someone has been applying for loans or credit, sometimes that information shows up in ways I can see. Give me Camden's full name and address. 2 days later, Patricia called back. Julia, you need to sit down for this. I'm already sitting. Camden has applied for 17 different credit cards in the past 8 months. He's been approved for most of them. His total available credit is over $400,000. My mouth went dry. How much has he used? According to the credit reports I can see, he's maxed out most of them. Julia, your son is probably carrying close to $350,000 in credit card debt. That's impossible. He makes good money. Good money doesn't cover a $200,000 house renovation plus whatever else they're spending on. There's more. He also took out a second mortgage on their house for $180,000. The numbers made my head spin. $350,000 in credit cards plus $180,000 from the house. Over $500,000 in debt. Patty, how is that even possible? Because Sloane comes from money, the banks probably see him as a good risk. They think her family will bail them out if needed. But Julia, if they can't make payments, they're going to lose everything. How long do they have? Based on what I can see, they're probably already behind on payments. I'd guess 6 months before it all comes crashing down. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen thinking. Camden had chosen his wife over his dying mother. Now, I understood why. Sloane had turned him into someone who valued money and status over family. Someone who would let his mother die alone rather than risk his wife being upset about missing dinner. But I also realized something else. I held the key to saving them or letting them fall. And after 25 years of sacrificing for my son, maybe it was time he learned what his choices really cost. Here's where my plan got methodical and ruthless. I hired a private investigator. It cost me $2,000, money I really couldn't afford on my fixed income, but I needed to know everything. Marcus Webb had been recommended by Patricia's divorce lawyer. He was expensive but thorough. I met him at a coffee shop in downtown Morristown on September 8th. Mrs. Bradford, what exactly are you looking for? I want to know how my son and daughter-in-law are really living, what they're spending money on, where they're going, who they're seeing. Everything. Marcus was in his 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Ma'am, that's going to involve following them, checking their social media, maybe talking to people who know them. It's not cheap. I don't care what it costs. For 3 weeks, Marcus followed Camden and Sloane around. He documented their daily routines, their spending habits, their friends. What he found was worse than I'd imagined. The report arrived on September 29th, 47 pages of photographs, receipts, and detailed observations. Camden and Sloane were living like millionaires. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, weekend trips to Manhattan hotels that cost $800 a night. Sloane was getting weekly treatments at a high-end spa that charged $300 per session. They belonged to a country club that cost $5,000 a month in membership fees. But the worst part was what Marcus discovered about the night of my heart attack. I talked to the staff at Le Bernardin, his report said. Your son and daughter-in-law arrived at 8:30 p.m. on August 15th. They ordered the chef's tasting menu with wine pairings. Total bill was $847 for 2 people. According to the server, they seemed to be celebrating something big. The daughter-in-law kept talking about finally being free to live the life they deserved. Free to live the life they deserved. While I was dying, there was more. Marcus had photos of Sloane shopping on Madison Avenue the next day, August 16th. While I was still unconscious, she was buying a $3,000 handbag at a designer store. The photos showed her laughing with the sales clerk, trying on jewelry, looking happier than I'd ever seen her. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. On October 3rd, I met with Margaret Reese, an estate planning attorney. Margaret was a sharp woman in her early 60s who'd handled my friend Helen's will a few years back. Julia, what can I do for you today? I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. I want to change my will. Okay, that's certainly something we can do. What changes are you thinking about? I opened the folder and showed her my current will. Everything I owned. My house, my savings account with $47,000, my life insurance policy worth $150,000, my car, all my possessions, was set to go to Camden. I want to remove my son completely. Margaret's eyebrows went up. That's a significant change. Can I ask why? I told her about the heart attack, about Camden's response, about everything I discovered. Margaret listened without interrupting, taking notes. Julia, I have to ask, are you making this decision while you're angry? Because changing a will is something that can't be undone after you're gone. I've been thinking about this for weeks. This isn't anger. This is strategy. Okay. Who would you like to inherit your estate instead? I'd been thinking about this question for days. I want to set up scholarships for kids who lost a parent young and need help paying for college. Kids like Camden was, before he forgot where he came from. Margaret nodded. We can absolutely do that. It's a beautiful way to honor your values. There's one more thing. I also want to sell my life insurance policy now, while I'm alive. I want to use that money for something else. That's called a life settlement. What did you want to use the money for? I'll tell you when the time comes. For now, just help me get the cash. That transaction took me 3 weeks to complete, but by the end of October, I had $135,000 in cash from selling my life insurance policy. Nobody knew about it except Margaret and me. While Margaret prepared the new will, I started phase 2 of my plan. I called Camden's office and spoke to his assistant, Rebecca. I'd met her a few times at company parties back when Camden still included me in his life. Hi, Rebecca. This is Julia Bradford, Camden's mother. Oh, hi, Mrs. Bradford. How are you feeling? Camden mentioned you'd been in the hospital. Better, thank you. I was wondering if you could help me with something. I'd like to surprise Camden and Sloane with something special, but I need to know when he'll be at the office this week. Oh, that's so sweet. Let me check his schedule. I could hear her typing. He's got meetings all day Wednesday, and Thursday he's in the city with clients. Friday he's working from home. Perfect. And Rebecca, please don't mention I called. I want it to be a surprise. Of course. Your secret is safe with me. On Wednesday, October 18th, while Camden was safely at work, I drove to their house in Maplewood. I'd kept the spare key they'd given me 2 years ago for emergencies. At the time, I thought it meant they trusted me. Now I realized they'd probably forgotten I had it. The house looked exactly like the photos Sloane had posted online. Everything was white and cold and expensive looking. It felt like a museum, not a home. I wasn't there to steal anything or break anything. I was there to leave something. I placed the envelope on Camden's desk in his home office. It was thick and official looking, with Bradford Family Trust, confidential, written on the front in my neat handwriting. Inside was a single page that had taken me weeks to plan. The letter inside the envelope read, Camden, by the time you read this, you will have discovered that your financial situation is more precarious than you thought. Over the past month, I have been monitoring your spending and debt situation. I know about the $350,000 in credit card debt. I know about the second mortgage. I know about every expensive dinner, every luxury purchase, every dollar you've borrowed to fund a lifestyle you cannot afford. I also know about the night I nearly died when you chose dinner reservations over your mother's life. For 25 years, I sacrificed everything for you. I worked 2 jobs to pay for your education. I sold my mother's jewelry for your house down payment. I spent my entire retirement savings on your wedding. I did this because I believed family meant something to you. I was wrong. You have 30 days to decide what matters more, your marriage to a woman who is bleeding you dry, or the family that has always been there for you. If you choose Sloane, you're on your own. I will not give you another penny, and I will not be there to catch you when your house of cards falls down. If you choose to remember who you really are and where you came from, call me. But calling means ending this destructive marriage and starting over. It means admitting you've made mistakes and being willing to fix them. You have until November 18th to decide. Choose carefully. This is the last chance I'm giving you to be my son instead of her husband. Mom, asterisk. But that wasn't the real letter. That was just the setup. What Camden didn't know was that the envelope contained a second page, hidden behind the first. And that page was the real bomb I was dropping. The second page was a photocopy of a legal document. A real legal document that I'd had Margaret prepare as part of a larger strategy. It was a debt consolidation offer. A legitimate offer to pay off all of Camden's debts, every credit card, the second mortgage, everything, in exchange for a lien on his house and a repayment plan that would take 15 years, but save his credit and his marriage. The catch? The offer was only valid if both Camden and Sloane signed the agreement within 30 days. And they both had to meet with me in person to discuss the terms. But here's what would really happen when they came to that meeting. I'd hired Marcus Webb for another job. For the past 2 weeks, he'd been documenting every detail of Sloane's real life. Not just her spending, but her relationships. See, while Camden was working 60-hour weeks to try to keep up with their bills, Sloane was having a very different kind of life. The kind of life that would destroy their marriage if Camden ever found out about it. Marcus had photos of Sloane meeting with a man named Trevor Ashworth 3 times a week at the Marriott Hotel in Short Hills. The same Trevor Ashworth who'd been liking all her social media photos for the past year. The same Trevor who was married to someone else. Marcus also had copies of text messages between Sloane and her sister, talking about how she was just waiting for Camden to either get rich or die so she could stop pretending to be middle class. But the most damaging thing Marcus found was a conversation Sloane had with a friend at the spa, recorded by a staff member who'd overheard them talking about Camden's medical records. Sloane had been researching Camden's family medical history. His father's early death from a heart attack. My recent heart attack. She was apparently betting on Camden having a short life expectancy too. She wasn't just spending his money. She was planning to inherit it. Camden called me on October 25th, exactly 1 week after finding the envelope. Mom, we need to talk. About the offer in your letter.
His voice was strained.
He sounded exhausted. I was wondering when you'd call. Can we meet? Sloane and I want to discuss the terms. Of course. How about Saturday at 2 p.m.? My house. We'll be there. I spent that week preparing. Margaret had helped me set up everything legally. Marcus had prepared a complete dossier of his findings. And I'd written what I hoped would be my final confrontation with the woman who'd stolen my son. Saturday afternoon, I watched through my kitchen window as Camden's BMW pulled into my driveway. He looked older than his 33 years.
Thinner.
There were dark circles under his eyes. Sloane stepped out of the passenger side wearing a new outfit that probably cost more than most people's rent. She looked annoyed to be there. I opened the door before they could knock. Camden.
Sloane.
Come in. We sat in my living room, the same room where Camden used to do his homework while I made dinner after my first job. The same room where we'd watched movies together when he was young and still wanted to spend time with his mother. So, Sloane said, not bothering with pleasantries. This debt consolidation thing. What are the real terms? The terms are simple, I said. I pay off your debts. All of them. In exchange, I hold a lien on your house and you pay me back over 15 years at a very low interest rate. Camden leaned forward. Mom, that's incredibly generous.
But why?
After everything that's happened. Because despite everything, you're still my son. And I don't want to see you lose everything. Sloane was already calculating. So we'd own the house free and clear? No more mortgage payments. That's right. Just the monthly payment to me, which would be less than what you're paying now in credit card minimums. I could see the relief in Camden's face. For the first time in months, he looked hopeful. There is one condition, I continued. What? Sloane asked, suddenly suspicious. You both have to be completely honest with me. About everything. Your spending, your plans, your relationship. No more lies. Camden nodded immediately. Of course.
We can do that.
Sloane hesitated. Just for a second, but I caught it. Sloane, I asked, are you willing to be completely honest? Yes, she said, but her voice was tight. Of course.
Good.
Then let's start with this. I opened the folder Marcus had prepared and pulled out the first photograph. It showed Sloane and Trevor Ashworth entering the Marriott Hotel on October 12th at 2:15 p.m. Camden's face went white. What is this? This is your wife being honest, I said calmly. Sloane, would you like to explain to Camden who Trevor Ashworth is? The silence in my living room was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Camden stared at the photograph, then at Sloane, then back at the photograph. I can explain, Sloane said quickly. Trevor is just a friend. We were discussing business. What kind of business? Camden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I pulled out another photograph. This one showed Sloane and Trevor kissing in the hotel parking lot. The kind of business that involves kissing in parking lots? I asked. Camden's hands were shaking as he reached for the photo. How long? Camden, it's not what it looks like, Sloane started. How long have you been sleeping with him? Camden's voice was getting louder. 6 months, I answered for her. According to the hotel records, they've been meeting twice a week since April. I pulled out more evidence. The text messages Marcus had obtained. The conversations about Camden's life expectancy. The plans to stop pretending to be middle class. With each new piece of evidence, Camden got quieter and Sloane got more desperate. "Those text messages are fake," she said. "Someone is trying to set me up." "The hotel has security cameras," I said. "Marcus has video of you and Trevor together. Would you like to see those too?" Camden stood up abruptly. "I need some air." He walked out to my back porch, leaving Sloane and me alone. "You manipulative old witch," Sloane hissed. "You've been planning this." "I've been protecting my son from a gold-digging liar." "Camden loves me. He'll forgive me. He always does." "Maybe. But can he forgive you for hoping he dies young so you can inherit his money?" Sloane's face went pale. "You can't prove that. I have recordings of you discussing his family's heart problems with your sister, talking about how you researched his genetic risk factors, planning for his early death." "That's not. I never." "You married him for money he doesn't have, spent him into debt, cheated on him, and planned for his death. What exactly do you think he's going to forgive?" Through the window, I could see Camden on the porch, pacing back and forth with his phone pressed to his ear. "Who's he calling?"
Sloane asked.
"Probably a divorce lawyer. That's what I'd do." Camden came back inside 20 minutes later. His face was calm, but his eyes were cold. "Sloane, pack your things. You have until tomorrow night to get out of our house." "Camden, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been cheating on me for 6 months? That you've been planning for me to die young? That you think being married to me is pretending to be middle class?" "I love you." "No, you don't. You love what you thought I could give you." Sloane turned to me. "This is all your fault. You poisoned him against me." I showed him the truth. What he does with that truth is up to him. She stood up, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this. Both of you. You have no idea what I'm capable of." "Actually, I do," I said. "That's why I had my lawyer record this entire conversation." I pointed to the small recording device I'd placed on the coffee table. It had been there the entire time, sitting in plain sight. "Everything you've said today is now part of the legal record, including your threats." Sloane's mouth fell open. "You can't, that's illegal." New Jersey is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, it's perfectly legal. Camden was watching this exchange with something like amazement. "Mom, you planned all of this." "I planned to protect you, whether you wanted protecting or not." Sloane stormed out without another word. We watched through the window as she peeled out of my driveway fast enough to leave rubber on the pavement. Camden sank back into his chair. "I can't believe I was so blind. Love makes us all blind sometimes." "But Mom, what about the debt? Even with Sloane gone, I still owe over $500,000. The debt consolidation offer." I smiled. "Camden, there was never going to be a debt consolidation offer." "What?" "That was just bait to get you both here. To force the truth out into the open." His face fell. "So, I'm still going to lose everything?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you're ready to hear what I'm really offering." I pulled out another folder. This one contained the documents Margaret had prepared for my actual plan. "Camden, I sold my life insurance policy 3 weeks ago. I have $135,000 in cash." His head snapped up.
"What?"
"Mom, why would you do that?" "Because I realized something. You don't need money when you're dead. You need it when you're alive and trying to rebuild your life." I opened the folder and showed him bank statements proving the cash was real. "I'm offering to pay off as much of your debt as this money will cover, but only under certain conditions." "What conditions?" "First, you file for divorce from Sloane immediately. No reconciliation, no second chances. She's out of your life forever.
Done.
Second, you sell the house and use the proceeds to pay down as much remaining debt as possible. Okay. Third, you move back in here with me. Not because you're broke, but because I want my son back. Camden was quiet for a long moment. You want me to move back home? I want my son back. The son I raised. Not the man Sloan turned you into. What about the rest of the debt? Even with your money and selling the house, I'll still owe hundreds of thousands. That's where the fourth condition comes in. You go back to being the person you were before you met her. You work hard, live simply, and rebuild your life slowly. And I'll be here to help you every step of the way. And if I don't agree to the conditions, then you figure out how to dig yourself out of this hole on your own. But Camden, I'm not offering this money because I have to. I'm offering it because I choose to. Because that's what real love looks like. Camden looked around my living room, at the old furniture and family photos and everything that represented the life he'd grown up in. Would you really let me fail if I said no? After what you said to the doctor that night? After choosing dinner reservations over your dying mother?
Yes.
But I don't think you're going to say no. Because the son I raised is still in there somewhere.
He was quiet for a long time.
When he finally looked up, there were tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know what happened to me. Sloan made me feel like I had to choose between her and everyone else, and I kept choosing her. Because she made you believe that love meant cutting off everyone who threatened her control over you. I missed you. Even when I was staying away, I missed talking to you. Then don't stay away anymore. Can I ask you something? Anything. When you had the heart attack and I chose dinner over coming to see you, did you think I didn't love you? I considered lying to spare his feelings. But we'd had enough lies.
Yes.
For a while, I thought you'd stopped loving me. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped showing it. There's a difference. I was scared that if I kept being close to you, Sloan would leave me. And I thought losing her would be worse than disappointing you, because I figured you'd always forgive me. So you took my love for granted.
Yes.
And I'm sorry. Camden signed the divorce papers on November 2nd, 2024. Sloan didn't contest it. According to Camden's lawyer, she was too busy trying to avoid her own legal problems. Apparently, Trevor Ashworth's wife had found out about the affair and was pursuing Sloan for alienation of affection. But the real blow came when her scandal reached her family. For all her old money roots and trust fund background, her parents completely washed their hands of her after the affair became public knowledge. The Hartwells valued their reputation above all else, and Sloan had become a liability they couldn't afford to be associated with. They cut her off entirely, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a crumbling life she'd built on lies. The house went on the market November 15th. Even in a tough economy, it sold within 3 weeks. The $200,000 renovation that had put them so deeply in debt actually helped the sale price. After paying off the first and second mortgages, Camden walked away with about $180,000. Combined with my $135,000, we had $315,000 to throw at his credit card debt. It wasn't enough to cover all of it, but it reduced his burden from $350,000 to about $35,000. Manageable for someone with his income. Camden moved back home on December 8th, bringing only his clothes and a few personal items. Everything else, the expensive furniture, the designer dishes, all the symbols of the life Sloan had built, stayed with the house. Feels smaller than I remembered, he said, looking around his old bedroom. You were smaller when you lived here last. We fell into a routine quickly. Camden left for work early and came home for dinner. We'd eat together and talk about his day, my day, anything except Sloan and the mess she'd left behind. On weekends, we worked in the garden together or watched old movies. It felt like having my son back. But I could see the stress still wearing on him. Even with the debt reduction, he was working overtime and weekends, trying to make enough to pay off the remaining $35,000 as quickly as possible. I talked to a financial advisor. He told me one evening during the winter. He says I could have this paid off in 2 years if I keep up the extra work. What do you think? I think I created this mess by making bad choices. The least I can do is work hard to fix it. Why? Because it means taking responsibility. It means I'm saying I can fix what I broke. I was proud of him for thinking that way. The old Camden, the one who'd existed before Sloan, would never have taken the easy way out. How does it feel, being back here? Honest? It feels like coming home. Like remembering who I was before I got lost. That night, I called Margaret and made one final change to my will. Spring came early that year. Camden and I planted a garden together, something we hadn't done since he was a teenager. As we worked side by side, pulling weeds and planting seeds, I could see him relaxing for the first time in years. "I've been thinking," he said one afternoon while we were planting tomatoes. "About what?" "About what I want to do with my life. Not just my career, but my actual life. And I think I want to teach financial planning, but to people who really need it. Not rich people who want to get richer. People like us, who need to learn how to make good choices with the money they have." "That sounds perfect for you. It doesn't pay as much as Morgan Stanley. Money isn't everything. Sloan taught me to think it was." "What do you think now?" "Now I think having enough is better than having too much. Because too much makes you forget what matters." We were sitting there talking about his plans when a car pulled into the driveway. I recognized it immediately. "She's back," I said. Camden looked toward the driveway and sighed. "Should I tell her to leave? Let's see what she wants." Sloan walked across the yard slowly, like she was approaching wild animals that might bolt. She looked terrible, thinner than before, her expensive clothes replaced with bargain store outfits. Her hair was back to its natural brown, and she looked desperate.
"Camden," she said.
"I heard you've been doing well. I'm happy for you." "Thank you," he said politely but not warmly. "I was wondering if we could talk. Privately. Anything you want to say to me, you can say in front of my mother." Sloan glanced at me, then back at Camden. "I know you probably hate me, and I know I hurt you, but I've been thinking about us a lot lately. There is no us. There could be. I've learned from my mistakes." "What mistakes did you learn from?" "I learned that I was selfish. That I cared too much about money and not enough about what really mattered. And what really matters? You do. Love." "Sloan, do you remember what you said about my mom when she was dying?" "I was upset. I said things I didn't mean. You said I should let her die so we could live the life we deserved. You meant that. I was scared of losing you. You were afraid of losing my income. That's not true." Camden stood up. "Let me ask you something. If I told you right now that I was going to live in this house with my mother, that I was going to teach financial planning to people who can't afford to pay much, that I was going to live simply and save money instead of spending it on expensive things, would you still want me back?" Sloan hesitated. Just for a second, but we both caught it. "Of course I would." "You're lying." "Camden, I love you." "No, you don't. You love the idea of me. You love what you thought I could become. But you don't love who I actually am." "That's not true." "Prove it. Marry me right now."
"Today."
"Knowing that we'll live in this house with my mother. Knowing that we'll drive old cars and shop at regular stores and never have a country club membership again. If you really love me, that shouldn't matter." Sloan looked trapped. "We don't have to get married right away. Because you don't want to tie yourself to someone with no money. Because timing matters." "Timing. Right." Camden sat back down next to me. "Sloan, I want you to leave. And I don't want you to come back. Camden, please. Just think about it. I have thought about it for months. And I've realized that the worst mistake I ever made wasn't marrying you. It was letting you convince me that love meant choosing you over everyone else who cared about me. I never said that. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Every time you rolled your eyes when I talked about visiting my mom. Every time you made plans that conflicted with family events. Every time you made me feel guilty for caring about anyone besides you. I can change. Maybe you can. But I don't want you to change for me. I want you to change for yourself because being the kind of person you've been isn't making you happy either. Sloane looked at me. You won. Are you happy? I'm not happy that you're hurting. But I am happy that my son figured out the difference between love and manipulation before it destroyed his life completely. She walked back to her car without saying goodbye. As she drove away, Camden took my hand. Do you think I was too harsh? I think you were honest. That's not the same thing as harsh. I did love her, you know. At least, I thought I did. You loved who you thought she was.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that person ever actually existed. Camden kept his promise about becoming a teacher. He left Morgan Stanley in the summer and took a job teaching financial literacy at the community college. The pay was less than half what he'd made before, but he was happier than he'd been in years. He also started a small consulting business, helping people who'd gotten in over their heads with debt. He called it Bradford Financial Recovery, and his first client was a young man who'd racked up $200,000 in credit card debt trying to keep up with his wife's spending. The first thing you have to understand, Camden told him, is that this isn't really about money. It's about learning to make decisions based on what you value instead of what you're afraid of losing. Camden paid off his last credit card in September, exactly 1 year after I'd given him that envelope. We celebrated with dinner at the local diner. His choice, not mine. You know what's funny? He said over coffee and pie. What? I'm making less money than I ever have as an adult, and I'm happier than I've been since college. Why do you think that is? Because I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not anymore. I'm not trying to impress anyone or live up to someone else's standards. I'm just being myself. And how does that feel? Like coming home. On October 18th, exactly 1 year after he'd found my envelope, Camden was in the backyard raking leaves when he heard someone calling his name. He looked up to see a woman standing at the edge of the yard. She was about his age, with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing jeans and a sweater that had seen better days. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. I'm looking for Camden Bradford. That's me. My name is Rachel Torres. I think you knew my brother. Camden looked confused. I'm not sure. Miguel Torres. You helped him get his debt under control about 6 months ago. Miguel? Yes, of course. How is he doing? Really well. He paid off his last credit card yesterday. That's fantastic. Tell him congratulations. I will. But actually, I'm here for a different reason. Oh, Miguel told me about your mother, about what she did for you. And I wanted to meet the person who taught someone how to love like that. Camden felt his throat tighten. She's pretty special. Miguel said you help people who are drowning in debt. I try to. I was wondering if you might be able to help me. I'm a single mom, and I made some really bad financial decisions after my divorce. I'm not sure where else to turn. Camden looked at this woman. Really looked at her. She wasn't asking for a handout. She wasn't dressed to impress him. She was just a person who needed help and had been brave enough to ask for it. Of course I can help. Would you like to come in for coffee? We can talk about your situation. That would be great. Thank you. As they walked toward the house, Rachel said, This is a beautiful place. Very welcoming. My mom always says a house should feel like home to everyone who enters it. She sounds like she's a wise woman.
She is.
She taught me that the best way to honor people we've lost is to become the kind of person they'd be proud of. I think she'd be proud of you. Camden unlocked the front door and held it open for Rachel. I hope so. Would you like me to show you around while the coffee's brewing? I'd love that. 6 months later, Camden and Rachel were engaged. Not because he was afraid of being alone, and not because she needed someone to rescue her from her financial problems, but because they'd spent months getting to know each other, helping each other become better versions of themselves, and discovering that they shared the same values about what really mattered in life. Rachel moved into the house in the spring with her 8-year-old daughter, Sophia. Sophia loved hearing stories about the grandmother who'd saved her new family, and I loved having a full house again. When they got married in May, it was a simple ceremony in the backyard, surrounded by the flowers we'd planted together. Camden wore his father's ring, which I'd given him the night he'd moved back home. I wanted to wait until you were ready, I'd told him. Until you remembered who you really were. How did you know I was ready? Because you stopped trying to be someone else. Now, 3 years after that first envelope changed our lives, our house is full of joy and purpose. Camden's consulting business has grown into a nonprofit organization that helps families recover from financial disasters. They've helped over 300 families get back on their feet, and he's become a respected voice in financial recovery education. Rachel works as a nurse at the same hospital where I had my heart attack. She says Dr. Richardson still talks about the mother who saved her son by refusing to enable his worst choices. Sometimes the most powerful medicine isn't what you give someone, it's what you refuse to give them. Sophia is 11 now and calls me Grandma Julia. She's smart and funny and has the kind of confidence that comes from being raised in a house where love doesn't come with conditions. She's already talking about becoming a teacher like Camden, wanting to help people make better choices with their lives. The transformation in Camden has been remarkable to watch. He's not just the man I raised, he's become an even better version of himself. The debt taught him empathy for people who struggle financially. The betrayal taught him to recognize authentic relationships. The choice between easy money and hard work taught him the value of earning his way back to self-respect. And me? I'm 71 years old now. 3 years have passed since that first envelope changed everything, and I'm healthier than I've been in years, surrounded by a family that chose to be together instead of being forced together by obligation. Last month, Sophia asked me about the envelope that changed everything. Grandma Julia, were you really going to let Dad lose everything? I was going to let him choose what mattered most to him. There's a difference. But weren't you scared he'd choose wrong? Terrified. But that's what real love is, trusting someone enough to let them make their own choices, even when those choices might hurt you. What if he had chosen Sloan? Then I would have been heartbroken. But I also would have known that I'd done everything I could to show him the truth. Sometimes that's all we can do for the people we love. Camden overheard this conversation from the kitchen doorway. You know what the envelope really taught me? He said, sitting down with us.
What?
Sophia asked. That love isn't about controlling people or making them dependent on you. It's about believing in them enough to face the truth, even when it hurts. If you're listening to this story and wondering whether it's ever too late to come home, whether love is ever strong enough to overcome the mistakes we've made, let me tell you what I learned. It's never too late to choose love over fear. It's never too late to remember who you really are. And it's never too late to come home to the people who see your worth even when you've forgotten it yourself. Sometimes the best thing we can do for the people we love is refuse to enable their worst choices. Sometimes protecting someone means becoming the villain in their story until they learn to rewrite the ending themselves. But in the end, love always finds a way home. That envelope I gave Camden 3 years ago contained the most devastating revenge I could have served. But it wasn't revenge against him. It was revenge against the woman who'd stolen my son and turned him into someone I didn't recognize. The real revenge was that Sloan lost everything she'd worked so hard to get. She lost Camden's money, his house, his love, his future. She lost her affair partner when his wife divorced him. She lost her family's support when they cut her off. And most importantly, she lost any chance of ever getting Camden back because he learned to recognize real love when he found it. She tried to play games with a mother's love, and she found out that's a game she could never win. Camden is 36 now, exactly 3 years after I handed him that life-changing envelope. He and Rachel have been married for 2 years, and they just told me they're expecting a baby. Little Sophia is going to be a big sister, and I'm going to be a grandmother again. The house is exactly what I always hoped it would be, a place where family gathers, where love is unconditional, and where people come home when they need to remember who they really are. On the anniversary of that first envelope each year, Camden plants new flowers in the garden. He says it's his way of celebrating new beginnings, adding beauty to the world instead of taking it away. And every night when I go to bed in the house where I raised my son, where he came home to heal, and where he's now raising his own family, I know that envelope was the best thing I ever did. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to let someone you care about destroy themselves. Even if it means they hate you for a while. Even if it means becoming the architect of their temporary pain to build their permanent happiness. That envelope I gave Camden 3 years ago contained the most calculated intervention a mother could serve. It exposed the lies, revealed the truth, and forced choices that needed to be made. Through that single piece of paper, Sloane lost everything she'd manipulated so hard to get. Camden's money, his house, his love, his future. She lost her affair partner when his wife divorced him. She lost her family's support when they cut her off. And most importantly, she lost any chance of ever getting Camden back because he learned to recognize authentic love when he finally found it with Rachel. Sloane tried to play games with a mother's love, and she discovered that's a game she could never win. But this story isn't really about what Sloane lost. It's about what Camden gained. It's about redemption. It's about a mother who loved her son enough to become temporarily hated, so he could be permanently saved. It's about a young man who lost his way, but found his way back home. And it's about a family that proved love doesn't just conquer all. Sometimes love has to fight strategically for what it conquers. Today, when I watch Camden teaching Sophia how to plant seeds in our garden, when I see Rachel making dinner in the kitchen where I raised my boy, when I hear laughter echoing through the rooms that were once too quiet, I know that every difficult decision I made was worth it. Because sometimes protecting the people you love means protecting them from themselves. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to watch silently while someone destroys the person you know they can be. The envelope that made my son scream with anguish 3 years ago ultimately became the foundation for the most beautiful life he could have imagined. Sometimes the medicine that tastes the most bitter is exactly what we need to heal. Comment below and tell us, have you ever had to make a tough choice to protect someone you love? What would you have done in my situation? Your story matters, and sharing it might help someone else who's going through something similar. Remember, your story isn't over. No matter how far you've wandered, love is always calling you home. Make sure to like this video, share it, hit that subscribe button, and turn on your notification bell so you don't miss when we post more real stories about family, forgiveness, and finding your way back to what matters most.